You ever spoil a movie for me in a dream, you better wake up and apologize. So for those who don't know, Reservoir Dogs is actually based on a film called City on Fire by Ringo Lam. It's not quite a remake in the strictest sense of the word. It uses very similar plot outline, but it's a much different story, whereas City on Fire focuses on the cop story from before he was recruited as a double agent to being recruited as a double agent to his friendship with the criminal. Reservoir Dogs focuses primarily on the events after the heist. But if you haven't seen City on Fire, you definitely should, because it's an excellent film. It stars Chow Yun-fat and Danny Lee, absolutely superb. So Freddie Neuendijk, better known as Mr. Orange in the film, is a double agent. He's an undercover cop, as we found out during the events of the film. And his handler, Holdaway, tells him to use the Commode story, and he says that when you're telling a Commode story, you gotta be a great actor, because if you're not a great actor, you're a bad actor, and a bad actor bullshit in this job. You gotta be naturalistic, you gotta be naturalistic as hell. He says it's like telling a joke. You gotta memorize the details and the rest you make your own. So what I want to do is compare that concept to the film itself. So in regards to the characters, are they naturalistic? Short answer: yes, they absolutely are. The opening scene, we have Mr. Brown talking about Like a Virgin, hence Like a Virgin by Madonna. We then have Mr. White's slight annoyance with Joe being abstract, and then Eddy talking about Kate Billy's super sound of the 70s, and then Mr. Pink talking about why he doesn't give tips. None of that is of any relevance to the actual movie, and why would it be? They're relaxed, they're comfortable, they're just sitting around talking amongst themselves. Even when Mr. White snatches the book out of Joe's hand, that just leads to some jovial comments. Other examples throughout the film are during the warehouse scene after the botched robbery. Mr. Pink and Mr. White are shouting at each other, they're both agitated, and they're almost getting into a fight at one point. When nice guy Eddy comes along, he's also agitated and a little bit ticked off and is clearly having trouble staying calm. In fact, the only person after the botched robbery to stay calm is Mr. Blonde. You gonna bark all day, little doggy? Or you gonna bite? But given that he is somewhat psychotic, that isn't really surprising. Also, in one of the backstory scenes with Mr. Orange, Mr. Pink, Mr. White, and nice guy Eddy in the car, Eddy is driving and they're talking about relationships with black women, and they're telling stories about people that they know. It's all very friendly. The point is that their behavior is always naturalistic to the character and the situations that they're in. And as for treating it like a joke and memorizing the details, nice guy Eddy goes into a lot of detail in his story during the scene in the car. Mr. Brown, earlier on when talking about Like a Virgin, also went into a lot of detail on his opinion on why he thinks the story is what it is. Dick, 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 dick. And during the warehouse scenes when they're all agitated, apart from Mr. Blonde, Mr. White goes into harrowing detail about Mr. Blonde's madman actions during the heist. This is what he was doing. Bam, bam, bam. So from that we can see that there is definitely a correlation between the storytelling of how this Commode story is used and also how the film is being presented. But let's talk about that in just a little bit more detail. The Commode story itself in the film is used by Mr. Orange in order to gain favor with the gangsters. He wants them to think he is just like them, even though he is not. Tarantino does this throughout the film, from showing the casual talk during the opening scene in the cafe to the next scene where Mr. Orange has already been shot and we see the bond between him and Mr. White. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. The following scenes are a mix between pre-heist, where they're mostly jovial and in good spirits, to post-heist, when they're all trying to figure out who is the rat. Their actions are all fairly relatable to the average person, as we see how we might act given, say, a friendly situation and a stressful situation. It's not until we get to maybe the last 30 minutes or so that we realize they are not like us at all. Starting with Mr. White, when he's in the car with Mr. Orange going over the job. Mr. White talks about how to handle a manager. He says to cut off his pinky finger, then tell him that his thumb is next. And at that point, he'd tell you if he wears ladies' underwear or not. And at that point, Mr. Orange stops laughing. And a standoff between Joe, Eddy and Mr. White where words become actions. Then Mr. White shooting Mr. Orange in the head after he admitted that he was a cop. And then you put the lime in the coconuts and drink it all up. It relieves belly aches. Also, by the story we're given, Mr. Blonde is portrayed as the most violent of them all, and we accept this by the way the story is told. But Mr. Blonde actually has 0 on-screen kills. Now, Brown and Blue, they died before they can get back to the warehouse, so their stories are too short to count. Mr. Blue, by the way, didn't even get an on-screen death, which sucks. I mean, the only thing worse than not getting an on-screen death is being brought back for the sequel only to be killed off right in the beginning. Now, Mr. Pink is shown running away from the cops, where he steals a car and he shoots at the cops when they come around the corner, and he tags one of them as well. Now, Mr. White is shown killing 2 cops while they're both in the car. He's then later shown killing both Eddy and Joe, and also he kills Mr. Orange, but that happens off camera. Now, Mr. Orange is shown killing a civilian after he got shot himself, and he's then shown killing Mr. Blonde before he could burn Marvin. Joe is shown shooting Orange. Eddy is shown shooting White after Eddy had previously been shown to kill Marvin. But of all the things that we know Mr. Blonde did, the only things we actually see him do is slap Marvin and cut his face. We don't even see him cut Marvin's ear off. Now, although of all the people who made it back to the warehouse, Mr. Blonde has the least on-screen violence, we can still believe that he is this psychopath by the stories that we're told about him and by his own behavior. The focus is on the details, which meant that although we're not shown much violence throughout the film, and we're not even shown the events the film is centered around, we can still be drawn into the story as if we were seeing it. Much like when Orange is telling his story and we get images of the cops standing in the toilets, none of that actually happened in the context of the narrative. Now, Alfred Hitchcock once said that I don't make violent movies, I just make you think that they are. Now, I don't know how much Tarantino was influenced by Alfred Hitchcock, but I do think this is what we're seeing with Reservoir Dogs. A film that isn't very violent, but makes you think that it is. Doesn't even show the events the film is based around, but makes you think that it did by the detailed descriptions given, in particular by Mr. Pink and Mr. White. It's an illusion. It's all just a Commode story. Now, there was some conversation around this when this film came out, and I think it's been pretty much resolved since then, but for anyone who may not know, Mr. Pink did not get away with it. Now, he was the only survivor. He leaves the warehouse with the diamonds, and the rest of it we don't actually see. What we do hear it. We hear that he gets into his car, he's trying to start the engine, but it doesn't start. It eventually does start, and he drives away, and at that point we hear the police sirens come in. Now, there are shots fired, but we then hear the police shouting at him to get out of the car and to get on the ground. So we know that he was apprehended, but he wasn't killed. Now, I don't think this was as controversial as Han Solo and Greedo, but Joe did shoot first. In fact, it pretty much happens in the order they said it would, with Mr. White saying to Joe, "Joe, you kill that man, you die next. I repeat, you kill that man, you die next." And then nice guy Eddy telling Mr. White that though I respect you, I will put bullets in you if you don't put the gun down. So the order in which it takes place is Joe shoots Mr. Orange. Mr. White then shoots Joe. Nice guy Eddy shoots Mr. White, and then just then Mr. White turns and shoots nice guy Eddy. And that is what I think of Reservoir Dogs. Let me know if you agree or disagree, or if you have other opinions. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, check out my other videos as well. Any questions, let me know and I'll do my best to answer them, but that is all for now. So thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm gonna torture you anyway.